generation is not a government entity that says, okay, there's the baby boomer generation, and these are the years that they were born, or here's Gen X, and these are the years that they were born. People just made these up. And then the media went with it. People wrote an article, a book, whatever it might be. So the years that are listed on here may be different from something that you'll research. I can read 5 articles in one day, and they're all different years. So they're usually about 20 years apart. So baby boomers are 20 years in range. Gen X and millennials are 20 years in range. That's a lot. I mean, especially for the younger generations. I mean, when you get older and you're going through life experiences and you have some maturity and, maybe some failures, you kind of start having a little more similarities. When we get to the millennials, I always feel like there should be millennial A, millennial B, millennial C. Because when I talk to a 30-year-old millennial, they're like, I am nothing like that 18-year-old millennial, or vice versa. And for them, a lot of it has to do with technology, and then also for the other generations as well. So again, it's about 20 years apart as a generation. Be careful not to judge based on what somebody says they are. There's things called cuspers, and they're kind of like on the line, and they have traits of both generations. But then it also depends who raised them. Did their parents raise them? Did their grandparents raise them? Were they raised in the United States? Were they raised in another country? Were they raised on the East Coast? Were they raised on the West Coast? Were they raised in the Midwest, which is huge work ethic in the Midwest? I always try to hire people from the Midwest. They will work till their bones are falling off for you. East Coast, West Coast, maybe not so much. And I'm from the East Coast, so I can say that, the Northeast. So be careful, with judging on their factors. What we see a lot in certain cultures, and then certainly after the downfall in the economy, is many generations living in one household. You may have that right here. And so if you have 3 or 4 generations living in one household, you betcha things have changed, because a senior may not have been texting before, and now they are, just to talk to their grandkid in the other room. Yeah. So, where before that was not an option. So there's a lot of things at play that are changing, and what we're going to discuss today is mainly about the United States, but a lot of these do hold true for the world, especially when it comes to technology, but we're mostly going to focus on the United States. So if you are a global organization, you may have to do a little bit more research depending on which country you're living in or you're working in. So on the bottom here, there is a quick overview of the generations of what years they are born in. So silent generation, which has about 17 names: silent, vet, maturist, senior. You'll see a lot of names for that generation. I feel like they didn't name the generations till after that, and then they had to go backwards and name that generation. And so you'll see a lot of that in different names there. They are from 1925 to 1942, so 70 to 90 years old. And their signposts are post-war, war and loyalty. So a lot of the United States was actually in war for the United States, not in somebody else's war, which is kind of what happens today. So, they're very, very loyal to their country and to one employer, or maybe 2. One would be in the U.S. government because they were in war, and then the second one would be their job for life. And so that's a huge difference. How many people here have had one job their entire life?
Before I moved here? Yeah.
So that means you already had 2, though. So, right? Or if you had a part-time job or an internship or babysitting, they all count. In the senior generation, they may have had 1. They went to the military, they came out, they worked in a factory or whatever it is for their entire life. There was always an assumption that they were going to work there from the employer and from the employee. That does not happen today at all. It stopped happening a long time ago, so it's not just the millennials. The baby boomers are 1943 to 1960, and they're about 55 to 70, 72 years old. And their signposts are post-war and then Woodstock. Depending on where you are at in that age range, you may not have gone to Woodstock, or if you did, you don't remember. So either way, you may not have any recollection of Woodstock. But I talk to some baby boomers, and they're like, I want nothing to do with that. And then other people say, oh, that's what defines a baby boomer is Woodstock. Everybody knows what Woodstock is. Big party. Gen X are born 1961 to 1981, so 34 to mid-50s. Their signposts are very independent and latchkey kids. If you have not heard the term latchkey kids, Gen X was the first generation that was a product of divorce, many divorces, so it became common and okay in society. So they may have had a single parent, usually at that time a single mom, raising them, and or just two households. So that was also the first generation that both parents worked. So baby boomers, women really went into the workforce, but not all females worked at that time. And definitely Generation X, they had two parents working. So what does that mean? That means they have to be at school, say, 8:30, and they come home at 3:30. Well, the parents are already on their way to work. So, and I was a latchkey kid, and so we had backpacks, and we had a key in our backpack to let ourselves lock the house up, hopefully turn the stove off, the ironing board. We didn't have all the technology. You had to remember the house would burn down. And then on the way home, we would let ourselves in. Well, when you let yourself in at the end of the day, you had a little, Johnny do list. Say, okay, kid gets home at 3:30, mom gets home at 5:30. That's 2 hours for them to do their list. Do you really think that list got done? So there was the list of homework, maybe change the cat litter box, put your laundry away. Mom gets home at 5:25. When do you think that got done? 5:05, 5:17, right? That's where flex time comes in. So you take that from their childhood and you bring it to work, and they're like, well, you told me what to get done, and you gave me a deadline. You didn't tell me how to do it at 1 o'clock. And so they're always left on their own and how to figure things out. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit more as well. Millennials, which we're going to talk a lot about today, because I know everybody's interested in millennials. Millennials gave me Amazon Prime, so they are the love of my life. I never have to leave my house to go shopping, and when I do, I had to go somewhere yesterday. I'm like, I'm going to have to actually go to the store and get this. It's a very specific product. So they were born 1982 to 1998. Depending, again, where you find your research, they're about 17, 18 to mid-30s. Their signposts are 9/11. So, as young children, they were introduced to terrorism here in the United States. And then we're going to talk a lot about helicopter parents, and that if you are one, you need to stop immediately because you're the problem, not the millennials. And then we'll go into, we're not actually going to go into Generation Z too much. They're the youngest generation, so they're like 16, 17 and not even born yet, because remember, it's a 20-year gap.